Another government panel, another way for the NDP to help their friends line their pockets. I've got the details on the NDP's Economic Diversification Committee, finally. Remember the NDP's much-touted Economic Diversification Advisory Committee? It was announced in late 2016, and the panelists were supposed to find ways to diversify Alberta's economy away from the extraction of oil and gas for some strange reason. Often invisible Environment Minister Marg McQuaig-Boyd said at the time that we can't live in the past and that we need to build an economy of the future. Most jurisdictions blessed with our natural resources would never, ever try to migrate their economies away from extracting them. But this is the NDP we're talking about here, and instead of stopping all the crazy things that they're doing that drive away oil and gas investments like carbon taxes and increased regulations, the NDP thought their solution would be to just turn the economy on a dime towards something completely different. Anyways, that's the gist of what this panel was supposed to do. Come up with solutions to fix the problems created by the NDP driving the energy economy into the ground, basically. And there were, of course, some familiar faces selected by the NDP to sit as committee members. Most notably, the co-chair selected by the NDP was Gil McGowan, the president of the Alberta Federation of Labour. McGowan has spent his life opposing private business interests. He's a former NDP candidate and a far left-wing arts degree holder. I'm not sure how any of this makes him an expert in job creation. In fact, all the things he advocates for, like increased regulations, actually kills jobs in the end. But McGowan doesn't really have to be an expert in anything. He just has to have friends in all the right places. In this instance, his friends are in government. Remember Rachel Notley's Farm Unionization Law Bill 6? We discovered through another Freedom of Information investigation that just days, literally days after taking office, the NDP were already meeting with Gil McGowan to draft Bill 6, months ahead of meeting with any farmer. Gil McGowan was consulted about a farm law months before farmers ever knew what was coming down the pipe at them. That's the kind of relationship the NDP have with the Alberta Federation of Labour and the labour movement. It's cozy, too cozy. Old Gil wasn't the only union activist sitting on the panel of what ended up being 6 members. Walter Frawley, the executive director of the Building Trades of Alberta, was there too. That's another union organization. There were no representatives from the non-unionized sides of labour in construction whatsoever. So we filed a Freedom of Information request. We asked the government to provide all records about the formation of the Energy Diversification Advisory Committee, from the idea through the organization, setting up the panel, the function of the panel, how many members, the appointment and recruitment of the members. We also asked the government to provide expense information like travel, accommodations, and even office expenses. Oddly enough, a lot of this Freedom of Information request is redacted by the government. The government redacted portions of the timeline commitment and broad, sweeping portions of the summaries of the work the committee completed that were eventually submitted to the Energy Minister for some reason. Why would they redact summaries of the work they did? That's weird, right? What were they advising the government to do that the government now doesn't want me to know or me to tell you about? I did learn a few things, though. I learned that Gil McGowan and his co-chair, Jeanette Patel, earned $450 per day to chair the panel. Everyone else made $300 per day. It's about the going rate for this kind of thing. Jeanette Patel is with General Electric, and although she is a very accomplished lady, she's not a business person either. She's a former diplomat who did great things on the country of origin file. But now she's with General Electric, and GE is great at crafting their renewables business model to milk the government for all it's worth, as we know from the Ontario experience. Here is GE Canada bragging about manufacturing 288 wind turbines for Ontario wind farms. In the end, it's been ratepayers and the citizens of Ontario who are paying the real price for Ontario's energy diversification efforts into renewables, while large multinational corporations are subsidized for their contributions to renewable electricity. Ontarians pay some of the highest electricity rates on the continent. From this Freedom of Information request, I also learned that the total budget set aside in September 2016 for this panel to sit was $250,000, $256,000 to be precise. It had a total budget of travel of $100,000. You can see the line item breakdown right here. It is very, very detailed. Let's remember, this is a government that told us to all walk, ride, or take a bus to save on our expenses because of an increase to the carbon tax, but they're spending $100,000 to cart around these panel members all over the province. But when the diversification panel was officially announced in a press release just 6 weeks later in October 2016, the NDP told us the committee's budget was $150,000. If the NDP gave me all the documents like they're supposed to do by law, then I don't have evidence that this budget was revised to cut over $100,000 from it. I'd love to tell you what exactly this panel eventually advised the government to do for its $256,000 total budget, but I can't. I can tell you that this panel kept a well-connected NDP insider on the taxpayer-funded gravy train, and he's the same sort of NDP insider who would be screaming from the rafters if the Conservatives were stacking panels with their pals. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Did you know that I have a weekly show here on The Rebel? It's aptly called The Gun Show, and we talk about the issues facing Canadians and Albertans. To get access to my show and to all of our premium content, become a Rebel subscriber today.